everybody. Welcome back to the Silver Lyming. My name is Anne Desjardins. I am a survivor of Lyme and tick-borne illness. I had my own struggles for 7 years before finally getting an accurate diagnosis. And through the process of healing and regaining my own health, I've really been compelled to start this podcast to share stories of hope and awareness for you, the listener, to know that it is possible to heal from Lyme and tick-borne illness. Many people often will say that it's something that you can't get better from, but I'm here to dispute that fact. And all of my guests on this show also will be evidence to the contrary, to let you know that, yes, indeed, you can regain your life. You can get good quality of health back. And it's very important for you to understand this and to hold on. Don't give up. Keep going with your fight. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs. That's one thing I could say through this process that I've really learned. Life itself is going to take us on a lot of ups and downs. But this in particular, when we're healing from a chronic sickness, is not just a straight linear path out. There's going to be a lot of ups and downs and a lot of bobbles. And when we're having those bobbles, just know, stay the course, keep going. My motto used to be 1 foot after the next. Literally, we hear 1 day at a time, but I couldn't even manage that. I was so overwhelmed with what was happening to my body. It was really, truly 1 foot after the next, and you can do this. And that's really what I want you to understand as a listener. My guest today is someone that I've been introduced to through the power of social media and my network. And Kara, thank you very much for introducing me to Sean Dunn. I'm really grateful for his time. He's stationed in Virginia. That's where he lives right now. And he's a real estate broker, somebody who definitely gets this sickness. And that's another thing we say. You don't get it until you get it. So if you're someone who's listening that has not had the experience with Lyme and tick-borne illness, continue to do your best to avoid it like the plague, because it is something that can completely redo, restructure, repurpose your life, whether you want it to or not. So Shawn, thank you very much for being here with us today. I'm really excited for you to have opportunity to share your story and to help us teach some more of our listeners some of the things that they can think about when it comes to Lyme and tick-borne illness. If you don't mind, in your own words, if you could share with us a little bit more about your story of how you became involved in the space of Lyme and tick-borne illness, please.
Thank you, Anne. I appreciate you having me, and appreciate all that you're doing for your listeners and for this audience of folks who deal with Lyme disease and feel the effects of it, who are just trying to learn more. When I was coming through my journey, and I'm sure many are like this, there wasn't a lot of information out there, certainly community of people out there who knew what you were going through. And so I think what you're doing is really important, and happy to add my story to your collection for those who can be helped by it. So thank you. My name is Shawn. I'm in Northern Virginia, little area about an hour west of Washington, D.C. We out here, Lyme disease is very common. There are a lot of ticks. There's a lot of awareness and a growing awareness towards Lyme disease and those who are suffering. And I think most people, as we know, they get a tick bite, they see it, they pull it off, they find a bullseye or not, and then they're treated, with some antibiotics to kind of try to rid themselves of that quickly, and that's awesome. And so we've got a lot of kind of that mindset and those kind of practices around us. For me, I didn't have that experience at all. I'm a real estate broker, like you said, and so my profession is one of showing lots of property, walking lots of land, tall grass, trees, and so I'm out and about a good deal. And I never found a bullseye rash, never found a tick embedded in my skin. But just one day, I was with friends. I'm part of a great gym community. We work out together most days. And so we were doing squats one day. And later that day, I'm out showing clients some property, and my knee started to feel like it was hurting, aching. And I thought maybe I just strained it in the gym that day. And I got home, I went to bed. The next day, I couldn't put any pressure on it at all. And it just didn't feel right. And, later that day, I was like, something's wrong. And I'm not one, I'm kind of a shy away from going to the doctor, which is not a great quality, but it's honest. And so my daughter took me in to see a friend of ours who's kind of a physical therapist type of guy. And he was looking at my knee and trying to move it around, thinking maybe I tore something. And he, after a few minutes, he said, your knee feels hot. I think you have an infection, and I need you to promise me. He said, I need you to look at me and promise me you'll go right to the emergency room and have them drain your knee and have them test it, because this is not something you want to mess with. And if it were up to me, I would not have. I would have gone home, popped some ibuprofen, but something in his voice, and he made me promise him, and I did. And so my daughter took me to our local ER. They drained my knee, which wasn't fun at all, and they tested it, and they said, we need to send you in the ambulance to the hospital. You need to deal with this. This is dangerous. And I was just like, this is crazy. What is happening? So the next day, had a surgery. Then I had another surgery to clean out the knee. And, the doctors, my body, they thought I was going to turn septic. And so the doctors didn't know what the issue was. They tried to grow this in a petri dish to discover, what I had, what disease I might have. Asked me where I traveled, if I'd been overseas. So the doctors were trying to figure out, if I'd done anything out of the ordinary to attract some infection. And after about a week in the hospital, they determined that I had Lyme disease. And, in some ways that was a relief, but in other ways it's like, wow, I didn't realize Lyme could do this, what it's done to my body. And so they got on the protocols right away. IV antibiotics. I had a PICC line inserted into my arm to deliver these IV antibiotics, as quickly to my heart and through my bloodstream as possible. And then, I started to get aches in my other knee and my other ankle. And they thought that maybe this was spreading throughout my body more quickly, and there might have been more danger to things. And so they kept me at the hospital for 3 weeks. And throughout that time, it just, constant blood tests, constant. Finally, they allowed me to go home. And the prognosis was, we need to get you to a specialist. We saw this amazing specialist, Dr. Jemsek in Washington, D.C. And, he put me on a very high intense antibiotic routine for months. And so I was giving myself 3 or 4 IV bags a day through my PICC line, and laying in a recliner in my bedroom for several months. And that as many of your guests over time have said, and I know many of the folks out there with Lyme disease have felt these feelings, which are, you go to a dark place. Is this my new normal? Is this my life now? Is laying here, not really feeling, hopped up on antibiotics, trying to treat something that you can't see. When does it get better? Does it get better? And this sucks, and I don't like this.
Yeah.
And for me, call me a traditional person, as the provider for the family, as the guy that has a business, helping other people with the real estate needs. You start to think about who's going to provide. Am I just going to be a kind of a weight on our finances now? as many of your guests have stated, you know, these are out-of-pocket expenses, especially when you get to Lyme disease specialists. And so this routine that I was on was out of pocket about 10,000 a month. And for how long? Maybe forever. So, all those thoughts go through your mind. And you just wonder about normalcy. What is normal? How is this gonna go for me? What's my future like? I had a daughter in college at the time. My son, he was still in high school. I had to depend on him. I couldn't walk at the time. I was everything had atrophied, and I had to scoot around for a good bit. So, my high school son, would have to help me bathe and dry off. And so you wonder all those things. What does the future look like, and what kind of hope can you grasp onto to get to the next day, right? And that goes on for a bit. I started to go in for daily an antibiotic routine at the hospital. I had to go there every day for a period. And I remember thinking I had to go to the area where a lot of the folks dealing with cancer were getting their treatments. And I remember thinking, man, some of these people are never going to make it out of this room, and at least I get to go home. In the hospital for weeks, there were times when I had to share a room with an older person or a really sick person, and I knew those people were never going to leave that room. And at least I got to leave that room, and that put life into perspective for me. It's bad, but it's not as bad as it can be. And that allowed me to have some hope. And I was in a wheelchair for a good bit, and I remember when I went from a wheelchair to a walker, and what a huge day that was for me. And I kind of walked around the room for a few minutes, and I remember feeling totally drained, and I had to take a nap after that. But that progression from a wheelchair to a walker, and then from a walker to a cane, and I started to think, I can do this. If I have to live walking with a cane for the rest of my life, I can do that. At least I'm not in bed. And so you start to focus on the positives, and you start to focus on the progress. And even though it seems slow, you can look backwards and think to yourself, man, I made it out of that room. I made it out of this wheelchair, and I can do this. Is the type of community that is life-giving. They encourage you. If you don't show up one day, they text you. They wonder where you are. They're constantly, checking up and letting you know that they care. And for me, that was a big bright side, a very big positive for getting through this period of life. And another big thing for me was that both in the hospital, and when I'm laying in bed, and when I'm struggling to get better, there were people who would just come by and say, we're here just to pray for you. We just came by to pray for you. And that was just so meaningful to me. Faith for me was a big encouraging factor, and one of those anchors that in the darkest of nights gets you to the next day and gives you that hope that you desperately need. And so for me, it was the community of people. It was the progress that you can point to and say, yeah, I feel like I'm getting better. And it was the prayer. Those were the three big things for me to get through that journey, the darkest parts of that journey, and to kind of get back on that upswing, which took several months, many months, but is now kind of a distant memory. So.
Good thing when it becomes a distant memory. I think that's really a sign of true healing when it's
Yeah,
not
for sure.
top of mind any longer, and it is just part of the past and where we came from in terms of who we are today. I find it interesting to hear you say that faith was an anchor for you in a sense, because for me, like, and I know I've talked to a couple other people about this, but I was incredibly angry at God in that period. Like I figured he left me high and dry. And I was like, how could you do this to me? How could you make my life this? I can't even do my wash. I can't even cook for myself. Like I'm struggling just to function as a person. And I had the hardest time going to church. I couldn't
Mm.
even look at Jesus on a cross. I was just pissed. And so once I got better again, like, and maybe that was just pure infection in my brain, because it definitely was in my brain. Um, I see now, and I often refer to this on the show too, but that image of two sets of footprints going down the beach, and then one disappears, and the person's like, God, why did you abandon me? And he's like, no, I was carrying you that whole time. How did you think you got through there? And I was like, I see that so clearly in my own life, but I'm glad that you were able to resort to that as a means to help you through the darkest times, because maybe that would have made it a little bit more bearable for me had I chosen that option instead, but it is what it is, and we come out to where we've come out. Um,
Yeah, and I would just say this, and that's not just the religious answer. I'm no saint, right? We all have the doubts and the thoughts of like, why is this happening? This sucks. Why God? And the faith, your faith gets tested, and you doubt it. Um, and it took people just arriving without any kind of announcement. They just said, "We're here to pray with you," and it's like, wow, I needed that. I needed that reminder. And and the second thing I would say is in the darkness of the night, when you're having those doubts, you can't see past the horizon. There is no horizon. And and now once you've escaped that dark thing, that time, you start to see that your scars tell a story. There is a reason you're doing this podcast that's helping so many. Um, you know, there's a reason and a purpose for it that you didn't see at the time, but that you're thankful for almost now. Um, for me, it was a dark time. It hurt. It's like I felt like I was on a game of chutes and ladders, where you get to the top and you slide all the way down the slide to the very bottom, and all that work and all that effort and all of the things that got you to the top are now gone, and you got to climb back up the hill. Um, but um, but looking back on it now, I'm thankful for it, and it makes you who you become, in a real way. And I don't want to skip ahead, but the purpose of it, the reason for it, how it allows me to interact with people now is not night and day different, but way different than it was prior to this journey.
I apologize, listeners. Sean's having a little bit of issues with internet today. So I
Can you hear me?
apologize for the
Yeah,
breaking up
sure.
and freezing momentarily. He has dropped off, so I'm just going to pause and we'll pick back up with him in a second.
And so the reason, the purpose becomes evident, I think, after you get through the journey. And it's like I'm thankful. I'm thankful that I had to go through that to make me the person I am now.
Yes, yes, which is beautiful. Again, we had talked a little bit before we started to record, but it is actually, it's kind of, I don't quite know the right word for it, but it's a different perspective to take, to think that it's actually a gift, because it's given a lot. It took a lot, but it's also given a lot. And I wouldn't have the perspective on life that I have had I not gone through it. And it's truly one of the most beautiful journeys that I've ever experienced. And I know for those of you who are still very sick, you're probably not seeing it through this lens whatsoever, but you can take it from people like Shawn and myself. When you get back to the land of the living and you get back to health, it is something that, in a sense, you are grateful for it, because it has completely shifted who I am as a being. It's made me a completely different person, a much better person. Again, to your point, much more empathetic, much more understanding. I don't know about the patience. I'm still not quite fully the most patient human, but sometimes I think that was part of why I got it too, was to learn patience and how to be patient. But it's given a lot of gifts as well. And if that's really why it happens to us, then so be it. But if you are stuck in the middle right now, again, just don't give up. Just know that there is purpose to this. And one of my friends said that God chooses this for those of us that need it the most in terms of growth. And I hold on to that thought sometimes, and it's like, all right, God, I see that you've picked me for this for a reason. Still trying to completely come to grips with that, but there is definitely a reason. And as Shawn had said, he's dropped off again, unfortunately, but maybe it's to have started this podcast. I wouldn't have been doing this if it had not been for my own experience with Lyme and tick-borne illness. Maybe it was to start the support group that I started. Maybe it's just to fill some spaces in society that we need. And I'm grateful again for what has happened and what has come out of it. But in the middle, it was not something that I was grateful for, excuse me. But I will say it is something that helped me a lot, was in my own healing journey. And maybe Shawn, you can talk to this as well, but I really had to shift my thinking and come more into a state of gratitude. There was a lot of times when I was just blazing both middle fingers and a lot of curse words coming out of the mouth and questioning my existence and why am I here and why is this happening to me? And I see all these other people having families and kids, and I can't even, again, do my wash or cook for myself. Like, how are they even functioning? Then that was really the period where I didn't know exactly what was wrong with me either. So it just made it all the harder to understand it. But, really, like, why does this happen to us? What is the ultimate purpose to this? And I don't know if you have, more thoughts about that.
It's the age-old question and dilemma, is the why. And something so small as a tick, can infect and take out a human being. This and other life experiences have allowed me to have some perspective that I think is healthy. Like I said, I was getting IV treatments with cancer patients, and knowing that many of those ladies were not going to survive, and I felt like I was at least going to survive, and so that perspective was encouraging to me. As hard as that was to see in other people, it was encouraging to me. I know that I didn't have Lyme disease as bad as many others have had Lyme disease, where it gets into your heart and it gets into your brain. And mine was more like joint pain. I can deal with joint pain. Even though I've had cloudy thinking as part of that journey, and here and there since, at least I can think rationally and reason. And, if my knees and ankles are the worst part of this, I can deal with that. So it wasn't as bad as it could have been. And so that perspective gave me hope. Why, we may never know the answer why. Ultimately, but for me, a way more empathetic person, care way more about people who are hurting, and want to go out of my way to help those folks. And it's given me a voice and a way to engage with them that I don't feel like I would have been able to do before this episode. It really softened me as a human being, I feel like. And so I'm thankful for that. And I hope that those opportunities continue for me, because that really gives me a lot of meaning and a lot of uh, just resolve as a person, knowing that I feel like I'm living my purpose. And there's a lot of joy in that for me. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Which, again, we had talked a little bit just too about, in a sense, the gift that it gives to us. And when you're able to see it that way, it makes it so much more tolerable. And, again, God picks us to go through this fight for a reason. And it's just because I think truly our souls need to evolve on a certain plane of existence. And without this experience, that wouldn't happen. We wouldn't be forced to grow into the humans that we're meant to be. And I'll ask you this. If this was something that you could not do versus like if you had a choice in this, would you choose this again?
so you asked me if I had the choice, if I would choose to get Lyme disease again. Uh, no one's ever asked me that. Um, I mean, I would say yes. Um, the journey was rough, dark, very trying for our whole family, not just me. Um, and if I could skip certain parts of it, sure. But for the impact it had on me personally, I don't think I would trade that. I don't think I would, based on what I hope and I feel is the good that's come out of it. To become more committed to my faith, um, to know the power of prayer, to know the power of um, helping people with their needs and their hurts. And I don't think I would trade that.
That's I respect that. I get such differing answers when I ask that question. And I actually stopped asking it for a little while because I was like, oof, some people are not super keen on this question, but I've thought about it many times myself and probably depends on the day. Most days I
Yeah,
would say no, because it really has transformed me into a better person. Of course, there's some days that I would say yes when I look at my retirement savings or things along those lines. I'm like, yeah, I would definitely not do that again because it's expensive, right? And it shouldn't be. We just had
totally.
a big event with our local elected officials and Senate, House of Representatives to really let them know that we need to do better on this front, so that people should not be on the hook. People shouldn't be having to choose between food for their family or treatment. That's just not right. If we are such a great place in the world for healthcare and having major advancements that way, why are we in a space where people are truly having to choose over food or care for themselves? And we all do deserve good quality of life. And I just think that part is still very underestimated by the normal Joe, the normal person, average person. And once you get it, again, you get it, but it shouldn't have to be that. So aside from the financial burden that I went through, I would say, yeah, I'd probably still choose this because one way or the other, our souls are going to evolve in the way that they need to. And at least I know this devil. This is something that I've walked with and I know now, and I've got comfort with it versus something else that could have been just as traumatic or terrifying and maybe worse. And so, okay, I will accept this fate and again, the gifts that it has given to me and the person that it has made me into. So I appreciate your candidness on that.
Yeah,
And
and same. I appreciate your candidates.
yeah,
It's honest, right or wrong. It's the honest answer. So,
yeah, yeah. And so then when you were healing, I know you had talked about PICC lines and antibiotics. Did you do any type of herbal protocols? Did you do any kind of energy healing? Were there things outside the box maybe that you took advantage of?
not really. I was on a daily protocol of 2 to 3 IV bag pick line for about 4 months, and energy and I felt myself staring at the wall at times for what seemed like hours. And I thought to myself, there's got to be a better, different way than this. I appreciate all of the work and for the doctor's care and all this stuff, but I just felt like I needed to um, do something different. And so about 4 months after, surgeries and treatment, I I've been going to our gym, just walking the length of the gym with my cane. Um, uh, the most light of dumbbells or weights, I try to, squat down and stand up. So it was very basic stuff, but just the positivity, being around people that cared about me, that alone just gave me such a lift mentally, in my soul. I felt it. I felt like I needed to have more of this to get better. And so I would just go in and ride a bike and just be around the others doing their thing. And day by day, month by month, it was a great dose of the thing that I needed, which was human interaction, uh, caring people, positivity. That was very good for me. So that was very uplifting and healing for me during that time.
Yeah, that's great that you found that space to go and just a good safe place to be to allow yourself to heal. Because that's also part of it too, is like sometimes people don't necessarily have that. And if you're listening to move, the same health or whatever it is that draws them there and gives you just some common standing ground there. And I know how Shawn and I got connected was through somebody that he met at the gym, and she was also a prior guest on my show. And that just goes to show like this really affects everyone in every space, all continents on the planet, all places on the planet. But you'll never know where you're going to meet somebody that has a very similar story to yours or this same kind of experience. So it's good to just get yourself out there if you're able to and talk about it. Talk to other people about what's happened to you, share your story, because again, you never know who you're going to meet out of that and the type of support that you'll be able to forge for yourself through those kinds of interactions. So I'm really glad for you that you're able to do that. When I say also, were you doing any kind of energy work, I have to stop myself because you were in prayer, right? Like you had people praying for you. You had prayer going on for yourself. That is one of the most powerful energies that we can do. And so, yes, you had some energy stuff going on too, but people are always asking me like, can you tell them to talk more about their exact steps with healing and what they've done for themselves? Because of course, people who are sick want to know, how did you do it? How did you get better? And so thank you for sharing that bit as well. My last question for you is, and you've, I think, already probably answered this, but we're going to go back there. Can you please share with me what's the best thing that's happened to you as a result of getting Lyme and tick-borne illness?
It changed me as a person. I think for me personally, the thought process about who I am as a person, why I'm here on earth, what is my purpose in life, what am I supposed to be doing with my time? That has all gone through a worldview change, I would say. It's made me way more intentional about how I spend my time, who I spend time with, the things that I pursue as groups or people that I try to help. It's really given me a lens of purposefulness, empathy, all those kind of soft skills that, when you go through a life-changing event, it really makes or breaks you. It will change you, and will it change you for good or for bad? And for me, thank God, it's softened me in these ways and allowed me to be, like I said, I don't mean to overuse the word purposeful, but really allowed me to try and live my purpose a lot more consistently, I would say. So that's the answer, as far as the best thing that I think has come from it.
Yeah, which is a great answer. And, it leads me to another thought in that things are going to happen to us in life, but it's more so it's what we do have control over. Like the things that happen to us, we don't necessarily have control over. What we have control over is our reaction to the things that happen to us. And it's really important to remember we can choose this to be something that breaks our souls or something that makes our souls. And if we choose to make our soul with this, it's just that much easier of a journey, if you will. It really helps us to commit to self, to find the self-love, to find the way that we need to support ourselves and have a better connection with ourselves and ultimately with God through this process. And I think quite a few people who have been broken by this, and it's unfortunate because we're all beautiful souls. We all have light within us. And, it's really hard sometimes when we're given a bad hand, if you will. But again, what we can control is how we react to that bad hand. And it's really important to stay rooted in the positive side of things and the gratitude side of things. Even if you're like, this sucks so bad, there will still be things that you could find to be grateful for through it. And it's as simple as the sun is shining on me today and that feels really good on my skin. I'm really grateful for that. If it's just that small of a shift that we start to make internally to find a greater space of gratitude for this happening to us, it's really important and imperative for the healing to really happen from the inside out. And that's where I find the best healing happens, is when we can heal from the inside out.
Totally
So,
agree with you.
yeah.
Great perspective.
Yeah. Well, many years of practice. So I really appreciate your time. And again, your willingness to share your story. And for our listeners, again, just remember Lyme comes in many shapes and sizes. Some of us have brain infections. Some of us have body infections. Some of us have both. Some of us get swollen knees. Some of us get a bullseye rash. Not everyone has the same experience. And there's underlying factors that are contributors here in terms of whether we had co-infections. Are we living in a moldy, water damaged space? Are we exposed to mold on a daily level? That also can impact how we feel. Heavy metals. There's so many other things that we have to look at when we're dealing with something like Lyme, which in my mind is the ultimate shapeshifter. It is like nothing else I've ever experienced in terms of how it comes and goes, how it can hide, how it can morph, how it can just really transform things inside the body. So if you're not sure about some random health things that you're experiencing, the doctor is not able to give you clear answers as to what's going on within your body, really do consider something like Lyme and tick-borne illness, because it's a lot more common than I think most people realize. You can get it as simply as just walking through the grass and you maybe don't even see the tick. Maybe you've seen ticks crawling on you. If you've seen ticks crawling on you, then by all means consider this as an option. But they're really small, really, really small. And I've had them on me since my original infection, and I forget how small they are. And then I see them and I'm like, oh, you little son of a bee. Oh, they're horrible. And they will always make my skin crawl. I try not to have too much PTSD over the experience and still try to enjoy nature, because it is there for our pleasure. It's not there to be something that causes trauma or stress for people, but you do need to be mindful when you're going into the environment outside that they are prevalent and that they can be there. So whether you're a real estate broker showing properties, you've given me a whole new gratitude for selling folding cartons, that I'm not walking through fields of willowy grass showing properties. I'd be like, yep, you go ahead there. I'll watch from here. I'll just direct you. I don't know how you still do that, but I wish you much continued health and success in your journey. And just know that, again, people, it can look like anything. So if you have questions for Shawn, are they able to reach out to you? Are you open to connecting with people?
Of course, for sure.
What would be the best way for people to find you?
Email me, text me. So
Can you share
Shawn
your
is, yeah, Shawn is SEAN, Shawn at fieldstone.re.com. Fieldstone is the name of my real estate brokerage, RE for real estate. Shawn at fieldstone.re.com.
Great, thank you. And again, I wish you much more continued success and health on your journey. Thank you for being part of my show and for your vulnerability and openness to do this.
Thank you, Ann. Good to be with you.
Yeah, thank you.